Good evening. So if I don't inadvertently hit buttons on my phone, I'm good. I've got an app on my phone that I use to switch the scenes. It's just easier than using the mouse, and you know. So that's what happened. If you notice the screen switched, I actually hit it with my pinky. Anyway, now that you know that important information. Wow, kind of a crazy news today. I guess I'll start out with convoy stuff because I'm sure many people are unaware of what's going on with that. Unless you watch the live streams, you wouldn't know. Something kind of disheartening was said tonight at the end of the meeting, and so tomorrow they roll out. Another meeting's tomorrow at 8 a.m. and they roll out at 9 a.m. On their way to California. And I will say, there was one of the live streamers, WYSIWYG, took a drone up today. And I will say that there was not very many vehicles there. I mean, when I say not very many, I mean not very many. So, and the real concerning thing about that is there was convoys. There were supposedly 2 convoys on their way in. So, and I do know that they were coming, on their way in. They were pulling in. So I don't know. Here's the disheartening thing that was said at the end of the meeting. Now, I guess before I say this, I need to give my disclaimer, or, anybody that's been around these parts very long know that I don't root for any political party or politician or anything like that. So, my feelings wouldn't be hurt. In other words, with this rule that was announced, they announced at the end of the meeting that the People's Convoy request that people only fly the countries or state flags. In other words, no F. Joe Biden flags, no Trump 2024 flags. Anything like that. Just your country flags, and I'm sure Canada would be okay too, the Canadian flag. But just the country's flags and state flags. And this was an announcement that was made at the meeting tonight. And wow, I'm floored, and I think other people are floored as well, as indicated by their live streams. And we'll see if this one gets walked back. I know that, and again, this is just as somebody observing things from the outside. Before, when Brian was gone, and there were some issues, somebody, and I don't know who it was, really brought down the iron hand. And I don't know who it was. I was given the impression that Brian wasn't very pleased with some of the decisions that were made in his absence. However, since they were decisions that were made by co-organizers, he was going to respect them. And those are words he said himself. I'm paraphrasing, but and he's gone again. And now all of a sudden, we've got this rule about what flags you can and can't fly on the convoy. Pardon me. I do not think that that's a good thing. I get that they want people to understand that they're welcome. No matter if it's right, left, doesn't matter. I get that. But, you are going to alienate a lot of people. Brian has said on multiple occasions, I've heard him myself, that if somebody wanted to bring a Biden flag, he absolutely would support that. Absolutely. And I want to say he said something to the effect that he would even approach them and thank them for showing up and flying that flag. And I do firmly believe that he means that. I do. And I, because I feel the same way. I feel the same way. So I found this very, very interesting. I have a feeling, just a feeling, that Brian's not going to be so pleased about this. But we'll see. We'll see what transpires. Again, there'll be a meeting at 8, and then they plan to roll out at 9. They did announce where they're going to go tomorrow night. I don't remember those details because I'm not driving there. So, but they did announce at the meeting where they're going to be going to and setting up for tomorrow night. And then, heading out and continuing on to California. So, we'll see. We'll see how all this shakes out. I don't know what is going to happen. There is so much to pay attention to right now. I do have many tabs open tonight. Some stuff that I want to talk about with you. And I really think it's something we better really watch close. A lot of the stuff that I have up I think are very important things. Probably got them somewhat out of order here, but we'll do our best with it, right? Pardon me. Kind of one of the things that I was the direction I was going to take the show is how it appears that Russia and China are working on their own new world order, their own new order. And look, again, I do my very best not to get too set on a belief or a theory or anything like that, because I think when we do, we actually handicap ourselves. And so when I pull back and I look at everything, I honestly don't know if there's actually quarreling between nations or if they're all working together lockstep to achieve this. What do I mean by achieve this? I'm talking about the whole Great Reset, whatever you want to call it. I think it should be really apparent that that's what they're after. And what better way to do that than global conflict, get everybody scared, confused, hungry, a little hungry, and begging for, anything, just stop the war, stop the famine, right? And then here they come with the Great Reset, or whatever it is they choose to call it at the time. I think this is right around the corner. And if they were going to do this, it would take all the major nations, or else you would see bucking against it. So when I look at what's going on with Russia and China and this apparent New World Order idea of their own, I'm stuck asking the question, is this legitimate? Is this a true bucking the, we'll say, the royal family's New World Order? Possibly. I don't think, and I have to go there, I don't think the Bible in any way references all of the governments working together like that. It does seem that towards the end days there is a major military conflict of some sort, and I know. It doesn't to me indicate anything that like Russia and China and the United States would all be working together to fool the people. No. And I think it's important to understand these details. Because, for instance, if those lights go out, it's those details that are going to be really critical for you to understand to know who you can trust. You know, can you not trust any government at all? Which is probably in the line I stand, but, you know, if you know whether or not your nation was involved in the fall that you're in, well, then you know whether or not to say trust FEMA when they come rolling through, or even the mail person, right? And there's a reason why I pointed out the mail person, because they have a very critical role when it comes to any type of a major disaster or anything like that. The USPS plays a very critical role. Anyway, I reckon I can bring you on over to the web view and show you the articles I got up. Like I said, I do have quite a few. Bread prices in Poland could quadruple, says former foreign minister. I just wanted to show you that headline. I you know, when I heard that, when I read that, first thing my mind did was go to that Bible verse. Loaf of bread, you know, costing a day's wages, and I'm paraphrasing. Russia makes new allegations about U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. Okay, check this out. Now wait a minute. I may have another article up on this too. If so, I will just not read that one. So, okay. Documents and other evidence from U.S.-funded laboratories in Ukraine suggest that Kiev was planning to use drones to deploy pathogens against the Donbass, as well as Russia itself, Moscow claimed on Wednesday. The Defense Ministry also alleged that it has identified specific U.S. officials involved with the development of bioweapons in the East European country. No direct evidence was provided to back up the assertion. Of particular interest to Russian investigators are documents testifying to the plans of the Kiev regime to use unmanned aerial vehicles capable of carrying and spraying deadly substances, military spokesman Major General Igor Konishnikov outlined during a briefing. Let me jump in there real quick, and I'm not trying to jump in defense of anybody or anything like that, but I do want to play devil's advocate here a little bit, and I would either way. But from my understanding, those biolab facilities, and hey, I'm the last one to trust a damn thing that our government says, but they were supposedly largely agriculture related. Okay? If they were agriculture related, one of the new high-tech ways of spraying fields is with drones. So you would have drones that are set up that have tanks and sprayers on them and whatnot, and you would have that equipment. You would have, you would have plans set up on how you're going to spray the crops. I'm not so sure that the stuff that they came across was for anything more than agricultural research. And I'm just saying, I'm not trying to defend the United States or anything else like that. But I know a thing or two about drones. I'm not a know-it-all about drones, but I'm very aware of the larger drone models and stuff that they use for spraying and other things. So, Anyway, wanted to point that out. So, I'm sure Russia's got plenty of propaganda going on, just like the U.S. does, every country. So, and I personally think that is Russian propaganda. However, I thought this was very interesting. U.S. ramps up imports of banned Russian oil. The volume of Russian oil imports by the United States has increased by 43% from March 19th to 25th compared to the previous week, according to a new report by the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Data showed the U.S. imported up to 100,000 barrels of Russian crude per day. Imports had been suspended during the week of February 19th to February 25th. However, in early March, the weekly supply of Russian oil reached its maximum value in 2022, amounting to 148,000 barrels per day. The ramp-up comes despite U.S. President Joe Biden's signing of an executive order on March 8th, banning energy imports from Russia and new investment in the Russian energy sector. The U.S. Treasury has set a deadline for the completion of transactions for the import of oil products, LNG, and coal from Russia into the country until April 22nd. Interesting. And it says here, in 2021, Russian oil supplies to the United States more than doubled compared to 2020, reaching 72.608 million barrels. That is 3.3% of the U.S. total imports. Russia has also provided 20% of the total supply of petroleum products to the United States. Interesting information. And I love how, the government makes it seem, like they're really standing up to another nation. I mean, how do they, pardon me, how do they act like, how do they sound like when they talk about these other countries, Biden's, calling Putin a butcher and stuff like that, but then you're still, letting their oil flow in. It's crazy. It's crazy. Letting their oil flow in and keeping our wells capped. Russian gas flow through Yamal Europe pipeline falls to zero, says reports. I have a feeling that you're going to see a lot of this happening in the EU and stuff. I think you're going to see a lot of it happen. It says here, Russian natural gas flow to the Yamal Europe pipeline on the Germany-Poland border fell to zero, Reuters reported on Tuesday. Eastbound flows from Germany into Poland along the Yamal Europe pipeline at the Malno border point stood at some 1,451 kilowatts an hour by 1100 GMT, but in the afternoon fell to zero, Reuters claimed, citing data from operator Gascade. And I know I butchered that all up. According to the TASS news agency, this may be due to equal gas flow deliveries in the direct and reverse modes. Gas via the Yamal Europe usually moves westbound, but when Polish customers buy gas from Germany, the pipeline reverses flow. So, who knows? Who knows? But I think we're going to see a bunch of that happening over there. Germany has triggered their gas emergency plan. And all this stuff is from the news that I put out, the last 24 hours. There's a lot going on with this. Germany triggered its gas emergency plan on Tuesday. The measure is intended to serve an early warning for the potential disruption of stoppage of energy supplies from Russia. The move was made ahead of the March 31st Russia's deadline for unfriendly countries, which includes Germany and the rest of the EU, to begin paying for gas in rubles instead of dollars and euros. Berlin's move is the first in a three-stage maneuver that includes early warning, alert, and emergency levels. Says German Economy Minister Robert Habeck said the gas supplies are safeguarded for now, but stressed the need to increase precautionary measures to be prepared for an escalation from the Russian side. And I would say it's probably a good idea to be prepared for that. All Russian exports could soon be in rubles. And this, it says Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov indicated on Wednesday that all of the nation's energy and commodity exports could be priced in rubles. Moscow has already demanded the gas exports to hostile countries should be paid for in the Russian currency. Peskov was asked about the comments by Parliament Speaker, and I'm not even going to try saying that name, Volodin, who earlier in the day called for pricing of all Russian commodity exports in domestic currency. This is an idea that should definitely be worked on, the Kremlin spokesman said. According to Peskov, the U.S. dollar's role as a global reserve currency had already taken a hit, and a move to pricing Russia's biggest exports in rubles would be in our interest and the interest of our partners. So, they're talking everything. Everything. I have a feeling that there's going to be a domino effect from this, and I have a feeling that there's a lot of countries that are going to start demanding that their exports be paid for in their currencies. And again, I think all of this is going to be different things they bring up as an excuse to go to a one currency, world. I really think, this whole problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic, they're playing it out well. They are playing it out well. Hang on one second. Okay. Kremlin reveals details on switching to ruble payments for gas, and we talked about that. So they've put out the details. It says spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the process of switching to ruble payments for Russian gas export deliveries will take time and won't begin immediately this week, despite the March 31st deadline set by presidential order. This process is more drawn out in time for technical reasons, he told reporters, adding that importers will be allowed time to adjust. Earlier this week, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the government to take necessary steps to switch all payments for Russian natural gas from unfriendly importers to the ruble, starting March 31st. The move targets states that are waging economic warfare against Russia by imposing numerous sanctions and freezing the country's foreign currency reserves following the launch of the military operation in Ukraine. Now, see, and I don't understand this because I don't understand why Russia don't just cut them off. I mean, I get it. I get that's war, right? Because I don't think, I think if Russia just closed everything off, stopped exporting anything as far as their energy, I'm pretty sure the other ones, the other countries and stuff, I'm pretty sure that they can't keep up among themselves, even if, we helped out or whatever. I don't think there's enough to keep up. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. Let's see. Estonia proposes not paying Russia for oil and gas. And I was saying that I expected that there were going to be some pipelines that did stop flowing. Yep, I have a feeling that is exactly what's going to happen. It says here Estonia suggested that the money Europe is set to pay Russia for its energy supplies should be used to rebuild Ukraine, the Interfax news agency reported on Wednesday. In order to make an immediate impact and make Russia pay for what it has done in Ukraine, the payments for Moscow's oil and gas should be deposited in a bank to be used to rebuild Ukraine, Estonian Foreign Minister Eva Maria Limets said at a briefing on Wednesday, according to Interfax. They also comments echoed the position voiced by the country's Prime Minister Kaja Kallas last week, who called on the EU to set up an account to temporarily deposit part of the payments for Moscow's oil and gas. According to the EU Observer News website, this move would allow the EU to continue buying Russian fossil fuels. So we'll see. Like I say, they're gonna get all scientific and do the FAFO theory, after a round and find out. And I have a feeling they're gonna get cut off. UK refuses to pay for gas in rubles. The UK Prime Minister spokesman said on Wednesday the nation would not pay for Russian gas in rubles, as Moscow demands. London is liaising with, and I know I said that wrong, with British companies who might be concerned about the issue or its impact on industries and manufacturers across Europe, he added. The statement comes as the Kremlin indicated on Wednesday that all of Russia's energy and commodity exports could soon be priced in rubles. So, and they're saying, hell no. And I think Russia's going to say, hell no. And I don't think it's going to go well. Another EU state declares gas emergency. This time Austria. It says here the Austrian government has declared a stage 1 alert regarding the supply of natural gas shortly after Germany did the same on Wednesday. Vienna made the move fearing shortages should Russia insist on payments in rubles rather than the sanctioned dollars or euros. The stage 1 alert means there are concrete and reliable indications that the gas supply could deteriorate, Austria's climate ministry announced, adding that it will be monitoring the situation. The country's reserve tanks currently stand at 13%, which is about average for the season, local media reported. Everything will be done to ensure the gas supply for Austria's households and businesses, Chancellor Karl Nehammer said on Wednesday. If disruptions happen, businesses will be encouraged to seek out alternatives, while gas rationing won't happen until stage 3, the government said. So, it's crazy. And could you imagine going back to fuel rationing, even here in the United States? Only got a couple more for you, and then we'll run through headlines and get the heck out of here. Let me have some coffee, though. Oh yeah, I didn't say the vapes, but I'm getting a few of those. Back to strawberry milk. Until that's gone. Yum, yum. Alright. I think I can move forth now. Alright, the last two I've got for you are pretty much about the same thing. Russia and China to advance to a fair world order, says Moscow. Says Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is meeting on Wednesday with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi for the first time since Moscow launched its military campaign in Ukraine on February 24th. Unlike most Western nations and some Asian countries, Beijing has refused to condemn Moscow and rejected calls to impose sanctions. The neighboring countries will work to achieve a multipolar, fair, and democratic world order, Lavrov said after arriving in Tunzi, a city in China's eastern inland Anhui province, on Wednesday. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova posted a photo of the two ministers greeting each other with an elbow bump. 'Cause that's cool, yo. Beijing has argued that economic restrictions disrupt world trade and will not resolve the conflict. Officials insist only dialogue and diplomacy can lead to peace. So, it goes on to say TASS quoted Wang as saying that despite new challenges to the ties between the two nations, the will of both sides to develop bilateral relations has become even stronger. The minister said this month that China's relations with Russia is one of the most crucial bilateral relationships in the world and hailed the friendship between the pair as ironclad. And I am pretty positive that those words were chosen very carefully, especially the word ironclad. And this one here, New World Financial Order is coming, says Moscow. This says here, a new financial order will be negotiated in the world, and the West won't have the main say in it anymore, ex-Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has claimed. The hellish, quote-unquote, hellish sanctions imposed on Russia by the U.S., EU, and their allies over the conflict in Ukraine have failed to cripple the country, but are instead returning to the West like a boomerang. Medvedev, the former Russian president, who is now the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, wrote on Telegram. This is hurtful for our friends in Europe and overseas. But while the West continues its fruitless efforts to restrict Russia, the world is gradually moving towards a new logic of global economic relations toward upgrading the financial system, he said. According to Medvedev, the U.S. and EU have tarnished their reputation by blocking the reserves of the Russian central bank. It is impossible to trust those who freeze the accounts of other states, steal other people's business assets and personal possessions, compromising the principles of sanctity of private property. So, I'm telling you, I really do think that this is going to go to blows. I really do. I honestly don't think that we are hurting Russia as bad as not only as bad as what we think we are, and when I say we, I mean the government, but I think Russia's bouncing back pretty quickly, and I think the decisions that Putin is making are sound decisions, and I think they're benefiting. I think they're turning it around so that this benefits Russia. Now, again, I'm trying to come at this from an angle of not choosing a side. I'm not cheering Russia on or anything like that. I just think that that's what's going on. As far as the U.S., each and every day that the U.S. keeps printing more and more money and spending more and more money is less and less leverage that we have on the world stage. As far as an economic standpoint. Our economy was screwed a long time ago, and the level of what they're doing today with their spending and the fruitless printing of money, it's not good, and I get it. People are hurting. I don't think they're hurting right now nearly as bad as what they're about to be. But people are hurting, and how do you help them without giving them more? That money's got to come from somewhere, right? The answer is not print more money. I don't know. I don't have the exact answers. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I could just mindlessly throw out there, but I'm not an economist, and I'm not a lot of other things related to financial and production and all of that stuff. So I'm not going to sit there and BS people and try to make them believe I've got all the answers of how to fix it, because I don't. But I do know that just printing more money isn't the answer. Never has been the answer, ever, ever, ever. So, I don't know. I think we're heading for a hell of a time. All right, let's do some headlines. And then we'll get out of here. Have a few more vapes. Yeah, I think things are going to get really sticky over there when it comes to energy. Really sticky. And, you know, I can't sit here and say that, I can't say that one of these EU or UK countries aren't going to get in a spat with Russia over this energy stuff. Who knows, you know? Who knows? Country could get pissed off and destroy a section of pipeline or something. Who knows? Who knows? I'm pretty sure Russia wouldn't take too kindly to that. It's crazy. Anyway. Trucker G is live. G's After Dark. Alright, let's I actually haven't watched Trucker G in a little while because he took off and went to the Midwest Truck Show, and I'm not a trucker, so I mean, I didn't have just time to throw away to look at all the pretty stuff. And it is cool stuff. I actually worked at a chrome shop for a short time, a semi-chrome shop. It was that's all they had was semi stuff, and it wasn't just chrome. They had all kinds of stuff. They had the train horns. I actually built a display stand for the train horns and got those all set up and operating and stuff like that. So that well, not just train horns, but they had several different horns that you could buy, and I set up a display table where you could push a button and listen to the individual horns to see which one you wanted. Yep. It was, I think it was called Midwest Chrome Outlet or something like that. It's been a long time ago. I don't think the place was there that long. I don't think they stayed open very long. Alright. All these are from the at least I shared out from today. U.S. sends Russia's sanctions czar to India. I hate that we even have czars. Pentagon contradicts Biden-Ukraine claim. A lot of people contradict what Biden says. Imagine that. Let's see. Talked about that. German trade unions explain what would happen without Russian energy. Ukraine warns EU on renewable energy. Germany, cover that one. Russia warns about Ukrainian use of UN vehicle. Russian grain union wants to switch export payments to rubles. Status of Crimea not up for discussion, says Moscow. UK has new Ukraine lethal weapons plan, says media. Can be bonked about other stuffs. Okay. Poland makes Russian energy imports pledge. U.S. recognizes lynching as hate crime. Estonia proposes not paying Russia for oil and gas. Kremlin reveals details on switching to ruble payments for gas. Covered that one. I think I read some others I covered. Sorry. Russia-phobia is the new mainstream, says Polish PM. Covered that. Top Russian negotiator comments on Ukraine's proposals towards peace deal. Ukrainian nationalists used synagogue to store weapons, says Russia. Russia accuses West of trying to turn Ukraine into second Afghanistan. I covered that. Samsung drops letter Z after Ukraine's request. Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm supposed to I'm supposed to look for a Z in the headlines and not pronounce the Z ever again. Power. I'm standing up. I'm standing up. I'm going to impede my speech for the rest of my life. Take that, Russia. Okay. I'm over it. EU country accuses Ukraine of election meddling. Slovakia boots dozens of Russian diplomats, says reports. UK refuses to pay for gas. Oh, cover that. Put a report out on that earlier. Big bank chief warns entitled Americans of food shortages and inflation. Verizon puzzled by spoof messages from unknown senders. Covered that. Another breakaway republic wants to unite with Russia. Moscow to investigate shelling of Donetsk apartment building. Progress made in Ukraine talks, says Moscow. Russia's Putin and Germany's Scholz talks gas for rubles. Let's see. Covered that. EU court refuses to lift RT print suspension. Twitter deletes pro-Moscow Indian accounts. U.S. and Germany reveal positions on Ukrainian security guarantees. Governor blasts Disney's opposition to recently signed law. Pentagon explains Black Sea withdrawal. Putin orders phase out of foreign software. Apple and Meta duped into giving away customer data. Let me make sure there's nothing new. Nope. Good deal. Good deal. There we go. All right. That would be it. Wow. Another quick night. That works for me. I'm just trying to get through. This is like, I hope the last week of crappy cold weather, and I'm probably just wishful thinking, but man, old man Winter is being a prick. I mean, his ass ought to be out the door and should have been out the door. I know, I know, not yet, but hey, it is what it is. I hate winter. I hate winter. I'm so ready to have the windows open and the nice fresh air going through, and that's what I live for. Anyway, I am going to get out of here. I hope you all have a good night. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again. I hope to see you then. As always, God bless you. We love you. Be one with your spirit, and shalom.